Hello again. This is Burt Garner, and no, he's not balding. He shaves it that way. It's a choice. Anyway, he finds himself in the midst of the zombie apocalypse, having apparently slept through the initial stages. The plan is to spend 100 days surviving somewhere on the fringes of town and trying to build up as luxurious and well-defended a place to live as possible in that time. But Burt's nothing special. As you can see, he was a park ranger. Not a very good one, though, being an underweight, thin-skinned, anemic, thirsty boy who's prone to illness. But what you'll notice immediately is that the inventory looks rather different. I'm using the Inventory Tetris mod, which brings things a little more towards a Stalker or Tarkov style system. Honestly, unless I run into any major compatibility issues, I think I'll probably always use this mod from now on. It's awesome. Anyway, day 1, and it's a stressful one. There's nothing particularly useful in this house, and without a bag you can't really carry much of anything. So Burt is pretty much immediately attacking hordes of zombies trying to break into more houses. He makes the questionable decision to risk his life for a satchel bag and then continues to flee from the dead. And it wasn't worth the risk, because near immediately afterwards he's found a duffel bag on a corpse. The normal kind of corpse, that is, not the walking type. But he's still got nothing to bonk with, meaning he's stuck shoving zombies over and stamping on their heads. So a stressful while later, Burt finds a metal pipe in a bin, which will just have to do for the moment. A few more questionable moves like this one later, I have no idea how I got away with that, and we're no longer being actively pursued by the dead. This person doesn't need their watch anymore, so we can finally learn the time. It's 8 PM already, getting late. Predictably then, after Burt finds this questionably fashionable woman's jacket, it turns out that they were still in pursuit after all. So they can have this house, we're going to the next. Which contains some handy books and magazines, including the Generator mag, and a big hiking bag, which isn't a magazine but it's very useful. Burt also realised his poor fashion choice and swapped that orange jacket for an only slightly cringe bandit trench coat. Anyway, it's late and Burt is getting tired. Day 1 draws to a close in this blood-soaked house. Day 2. Burt needs a proper weapon. So the plan is to head to an area of town where folks have garages in which to keep their heavy blunt objects. Where I come from we say garage, but you know. Anyway, whilst watching the morning TV and reading about cars a little, we find out that we're actually already in that area of town. In the garage next door, oh baby, that's a tasty garage full of heavy blunt objects. Sledgehammer, crowbar, axe, saw, pickaxe. All very good stuff. Moving into their house, you'll notice me picking up these anti-radiation iodine pills. Don't worry about that too much. There was supposed to be a nuclear element to this playthrough, but it didn't come together as I had planned, so just ignore it, okay? For the rest of the day, Burt goes house to house, garage to garage, growing his supply of bludgeoning objects. We find ourselves in this house that some unfortunate survivors boarded up before meeting their demise. As usual, it's full of very useful tools and all that good stuff. And you know, this also seems like a good place to use as a base for a little while. Somewhere to store all the resources we'll need to eventually build a home out in the woods. There are guns and ammo here, of course, too, but I can't see Burt making any use of them. So anyway, now it's time for bed. Day 3. I want to start focusing on finding a vehicle. Nearly immediately whilst searching, Burt finds a generator just across the road, which is very handy. And there's a couple of promising vehicles right here on the street. None of them have keys, but it shouldn't be too hard to grind mechanics high enough to be able to hotwire them. We need fuel though, so after watching the Carpentry show and learning just how bad a trait anemic is, just look at the bleed rate from a scratch on his foot, Burt heads to the nearby gas station, grabs 2 cans from inside and fills them from the pumps. After crowbarring some zombies, it's time to head home. So back at base we're reading Mechanics 1 to make this go a little more quickly. We've already got electrical level 1 from character creation, and that's all we need to hotwire, thankfully. So then, day 4. Time to go and start ripping bits off of cars. Whilst moving house to house, I do get myself the all-important bum bag, in which to store pills and bandages. And in the garage nearby, Burt picks up a welder mask, and then in another garage, a wrench. The only vehicle tool we're missing now is a jack. By the end of the day, we've dragged this big handy box back to base, added by a mod called New Containers, which, as you can imagine, is helpful given the inventory Tetris situation. Another book and a TV show later, it's once again time for bed. Day 5. I'd really like to either find a working vehicle with a key or a jack to train mechanics today. So naturally then, Burt is off to the local mechanics. He bonks the local clientele and staff back to sleep before poking around all the shelves. And it might be the last thing we find, but we still found it. A jack. So there, now we've got our full set of mechanics tools. A lug wrench, jack, wrench, and a screwdriver. With these tools we can train mechanics by repeatedly stripping and installing parts from vehicles. An afternoon of that sees Burt very close to mechanics level 2, which means by mid-morning of day 6, we can stop torturing this poor old wood-panelled beast and hotwire us a little blue sports nugget. It's not the vehicle I would choose, but it should help us find one that I would. Like this truck. I had to break a window to get into it, so I found some more trucks nearby to steal one from, as well as more gas cans and spare tyres. Alright, we've got a vehicle and the capability to get more. I think it's time to find a home. Day 7, which comes with the unfortunate discovery that the water supply has stopped. Best get self-sufficient then. The truck is fully loaded with important survival type things. Let's go for a drive. There's a dirt track that leads to a clearing a little ways from town, and if we lead the locals away and then clear any left once we return, we can start training maintenance through lumberjacking. But, I forgot the saw, so it's back to town. Day 8. It's raining, so Burt picks up the saw that I forgot last time and drives to the new site with the generator in his lap. He really should build some rain collectors ASAP. There's technically plenty of water still left sitting in people's pipes, but it's a pain to go and get it bit by bit all the time. It's 8 AM and Burt is kneeling in the pouring rain, laying the foundations for a building, when of course, the helicopter arrives. Thanks. Just love it. And then comes the fog. With the town's whole population on the move and visibility worsening, we can stick around and fight for a while, but before too long, there's too many. Meaning Burt has to get in the truck and flee to his more secure former base. On the way back into the house, Burt scoops up the neighbor's microwave, since we need a way to purify water in plastic containers back at base. With it stashed away in the truck, Burt does a quick runaround, taking all the sheets down from the windows in the base, since we'll want those too, and then it's off to bed. Day 9. On the way back to the worksite, I decided to stop and deliver some crowbar-based justice to the locals, and took a nice shotgun from one of them. I actually looted quite a few houses along the way too, because, food. Anyway, back at the worksite, let's get back to building our shack. Which means, of course, more lumberjacking. However, I forgot that in order to really start building, I need to train carpentry some more. So it's back to West Point, where Burt will fight his way into the small commercial district looking for books. And he gets a decent haul, taking carpentry 2, 3, and 4, as well as the same for metalwork and farming. Now, to find somewhere to sleep, read a book about carpentry, and then dismantle the whole world. Day 10. I sat reading my carpentry book, waiting for the carpentry show to deliver me some free levels, and it never came. So it looks like broadcasting has stopped. Never mind, let's rip some things apart. And now, a reading break. Carpentry 3 is sucked into Burt's brain through the night, into day 11. Time to deconstruct the very bed he just slept through the day in, and then head home to build. Once again, through the night, which you can't see very well here on YouTube, so we'll pick back up here in the early morning of day 12, where it's time to move some corpses. Burt's getting sick of them, quite literally. Anyway, back to building. Carpentry level 6 means we can make stairs to put a second floor on our shed, which I guess now, sort of, has a bedroom. There's a little storage and a rolled out sleeping bag. Unfortunately, Burt's sleep schedule is wonky as heck. The result of which is us sitting awake in the shed just past midnight of day 13. Reading in the pitch dark. I don't know how it works either. But now it's light, off we go to train mechanics some more. I want to hit level 5 eventually, at which point you can start to maintain engines. But on the way back into town, holy crap, that's a lot of zombies. Instead of heading into town then, Burt heads out towards a nearby farmhouse, stopping at a pair of crashed trucks halfway up the drive. His next mechanical victims. Once more, Burt works through the night on them, into the wee hours of day 14, before heading into the farmhouse for food and sleep. There's another pair of vehicles in the driveway of this place, more metallic victims for Burt's tools. At midnight I forced him to sleep, just to try and get the schedule back on track. So, into day 15, more vehicular destruction, and then, just to break things up a little bit, let's mooch around the nearby lakeside mansions. Inside of one is a bit of a weird scene. A zombie doctor, or at least one dressed like a doctor, in a room full of skeletons. Anyway, moving on, it's late, so it's another night in the farmhouse. And on day 16 we finally make it to our original destination, West Point. The plan was to train mechanics more, but as usual it's morphed into a random looting job. Burt goes house to house killing zombies and raiding people's drawers for anything that might even be remotely useful. Useful like another barricaded house full of axes, for example. Whilst in the fridge there, I decided to finally check on Burt's weight and saw that he's all the way up to 86 kilograms, having started at 60. 26 kilograms in 16 days. No comment. In another random house, Burt replaces his slightly cringy bandit trench coat with a maybe slightly less cringe leather jacket. And also a neat pouch to replace one of his bum bags with, since by this point he was dual-wielding them. One on the front, one on the back, like a real Chad. Marking his map with the location of a spare generator and some tools and weapons that can't be carried right now, Burt continues his journey through West Point's residential zones, stumbling across this lovely wagon in near-perfect condition. So he drags it back to the base where, as usual, there are hordes of zombies waiting. Realistically, too many to kill, and trying to use vehicles to move large quantities of undead never seems to go to plan, so Burt just leads them into the woods and loops back home to deal with stragglers. Throughout the rest of the day, more stragglers come in whilst Burt works to harvest enough wood to continue building. But shortly after starting work on the first floor, it's, once again, time for bed. Early in the morning of day 17, someone to our southwest let rip with an automatic weapon, meaning we get to wake up to yet more shambling dead. That's no big deal though. Burt's pretty reliable with that crowbar by this point. Now, back to work. Building windows, organising storage crates, and running back and forth with logs a great many times. By the evening, it's done. I mean, it doesn't have a roof, but you know, the walls are up. This will become a quaint little workshop soon enough. But right now, Burt's got to get that Jenny running to purify some plastic bottles of water in the microwave. Yummy BPA. Naturally, running the noisy generator attracted more zombies, which is why the place will eventually have a wall. Day 18. We're off back into town to train mechanics some more. After making an area relatively safe, Burt gets to work on this truck before sleeping in a nearby house and finishing up mechanics level 4 in the morning. You need level 5 for engine repairs like I mentioned, but getting there will involve another book. So after a quick fuel stop, it's back to base, where he'll build some crates, tables and a bookshelf upstairs, before shifting the bookshelf downstairs to the bedroom, where the reading in pitch darkness happens. I like this base so far. It's simple, but I can kind of see its future. Zombies keep shambling over to it though, so a log wall is the near future. Day 19 then is spent building. I laid out a crop area before finally starting on that wall. I decided to make log walls instead of, normal walls, using the truck to slightly more quickly transport the large quantities of logs required and then tying them together with strips of cloth torn from the nearby corpse pile. Nice. This is going to take quite a long time. A good few days worth of work at least. So on day 20, instead of continuing that work, Burt's off to find some farming supplies. It makes sense to get crops planted now rather than later, once looting for food has become more difficult. Realistically, you could survive for a very long time on scavenged food in single-player Zomboid, but when I play Zomboid like this, there's at least a small part of me that's just living out an off-grid fantasy through gaming, so, just let me plant my garden. Anyway, I took seeds from grocery stores and plenty of tools, including a pair of flood lamps from a hardware store in town, and headed home with them before dark, putting everything away and reading a little more of Mechanics Volume 3 before bed. On day 21, it's back to wall building. And day 22. And 23. Whilst taking a break from building to finish off that book, I realised I don't have an easy way to water these crops. There's no water in the rain collectors yet, but that doesn't matter. Burt, you see, is a blessed individual who gets what he asks for. Lovely rain. Through the night, the crops are watered and the collectors filled, leaving Burt to finish his book about cars on the foggy morning of day 24. After which, as the fog clears, I realise there's a few things Burt could use here. For starters, there's a bag full of VHS tapes here, including a few episodes of Carzone, so we need to go find a TV. And while we're out there, the sleeping bag isn't cutting it. Burt breaks into another barricaded house full of the usual goodies, including a nice pair of boots. But it's now that I notice as well that the power is out. I'm not sure for how long, but the food in fridges hasn't gone rotten yet. Anyway, after raiding their fridge and cupboards, Burt steals their TV and a bed, heading home for a considerably better night's sleep. On day 25, Burt is back at the Carpentry, building another structure now. I'd call it a shed, but he already lives in one of those, so this is a small personal warehouse instead. Whilst sawing the logs for this little build, Burt hits level 7 Carpentry, meaning its walls will look nicer. Also meaning we can make better water collectors, which is good. Because on day 26, it's raining. A lot. By the time the walls are almost finished, that's Carpentry level 8. Wowzers. Burt really knows his way around a dowel. Even his crates are looking neat and tidy now. What a rush. Day 27 starts and ends with a book about tailoring, before finally making use of that new TV and its VHS player to save some vehicle disassembly. Day 28. Burt did some sewing. No one needs to see that. On day 29, we're back out into town because Burt needs some knobs and hinges. We're dismantling doors in town to make the large double gate doors back at base. This is also when I realised that I can straight up steal windows out of houses. Good to know. Zombies at the base, though, continue to be a problem. So finally, on day 30, we'll build some gates and finish that dang wall. It took Burt a month to build this little compound, and I love it. It's so cozy. It's not unnecessarily large, just enough to get by. Burt, though, as you could surely imagine, wants more. It's day 31, and I know for a fact that there are some very cool vehicles out there. So out again we go, killing a frankly astonishing number of zombies whilst looking for cars to either disassemble or take home. I hadn't noticed it yet, but Burt is desensitized now, no longer becoming panicked in combat, which makes him an even more ruthlessly efficient crowbar-wielding killer. But now he's tired, so it's time for bed. On day 32, or maybe it's day 33, whatever, this is when I realise that Burt isn't panicking anymore and check the count. About 660 kills. What a Chad. At this point, I'm kind of just killing for fun, which is never a good sign, but I mean, come on, look at him go. It's only when exhaustion sets in that the one-taps slow down. Once they're cleared, Burt can fiddle about with his dumper to finish off Mechanics 5. So now, once again, it's time for bed. The next day, Burt works some more on tailoring and even makes a little start on electronics. Tailoring is one of the skills that's affected quite a bit by the Inventory Tetris mod, since for some reason it interferes with your ability to rip up clothing from all nearby corpses. You gotta do them one by one, which is considerably slower. Now though, we'll turn our attention back to things of a vehicular persuasion. Burt is stopping by every vehicle on the road and ripping out the useful engine bits, killing any shamblers as he goes. There's a fuel tanker here that I'd really like to have, but it's in an absolutely awful state. It would be a serious mission to get it in decent shape again. I stopped by this trailer here to hook it up to the wagon. It's useful for very obvious reasons with inventory Tetris, and while I was there, this zombie in military camouflage shows up. So, Burt steals his clothes before hooking up the trailer and crossing the road. To this. Ooh, Nelly. That right there is a Peterbilt. Yeehaw! In absolutely beautiful condition. It's also unlocked, so we'll just need hot wiring. We'll leave the wagon here for now. Obviously I've got to get this thing back home. I love these trucks. Back at base the next day, I have a look at the options for modification. If I wanted to fully up armor it, then I would need metalworking level 8. Which sounds like a fun long-term project, but that would take a really long time. A much nearer-term project is to replace the fuel tank in this beast. It's the only part of it in rough condition. However, I'm currently limited by which vehicle magazines I've read. Even if I had a perfect fuel tank, I couldn't replace the existing one without the required knowledge. Anyway, I know that there's a trailer for it around here somewhere. Ah, here it is. Now, about that knowledge. We've already exhausted West Point's bookstore, so let's go to Muldraw. It's turning towards evening, so probably not the best time to be going on an adventure. At least on the way there, we spot this guy with his big backpack. Burt's backpack now. Headed down the highway though, the trailer has to remain here, since we're not going to get through the wreckage otherwise. Onwards into Muldraw, along the main straight near the bookshop, it's time to flatten some of the locals, who are here in pretty serious numbers. Huh. 2 serious numbers for our mighty American-built truck, apparently. After driving over a few too many rotting bones, there goes a wheel. And somehow also the front windscreen. Okay, fine, we'll drag some zombies away and get at the bookshop. Then look for somewhere to sleep before finding new transport. It's past midnight now, but here we are in the bookstore. There's plenty of metal workbooks, the whole set in fact, but no vehicle magazines. Dang. Alright, we'll kill some more zombies before finding an something overconfidence, slow and insidious killer. Well, here we are. Burt's dead. And clearly I wasn't happy about it, immediately quitting the game. That's very funny to watch now. So, yeah. This video is kind of just me making use of a failed run. The plan was to go for 100 days, but here we are. We can't all be winners. I think next time I'll play a character with a full head of hair. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know. Like the video, leave a comment, subscribe, etc. All that good stuff. Whatever you do, please remain indoors. Evidently, it's not safe outside. If you don't believe me, just ask Burt. Thanks for watching, and until next time, goodbye.